Hi and welcome to the Trading Bell. We have set camp right here at TransCentury offices. We'll be speaking to Shaka Kariuki, the group chairman at TransCentury Group, and they have something to offer because they are floating a rights issue following the approvals by the authority. But first, let's get to know what they're all about and what they're doing and how you stand to benefit. Shaka Kariuki, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Quite some spacious offices around here. I enjoyed looking at the view when I was coming in. But first, people could be asking, what is TransCentury and what are they up to, or what do they do? I would like to start this conversation by asking you to kindly help our viewers understand who you are and what you do.
Okay. TransCentury is actually an investment group, an investment company. And through TransCentury, we have a number of very interesting subsidiary units that we own. Companies such as East African Cables, such as TANAREC out of Tanzania, such as AEA, and so forth. So I would say TransCentury is an investment company, and we make investments in this region.
Great. So there you have it. So at least a number of them that people may identify with. And let me start by asking you, recently you announced the approval of a rights issue. Could you give us an overview of this particular transaction?
Okay. The rights issue is actually a funding transaction that is going to allow the shareholders of TransCentury to recapitalize their business by going to the market and purchasing additional shares at a prescribed price. Through that process, we are hoping to be able to raise about 2 billion shillings. Yes.
So if I may ask for the sake of the viewers as well, when we talk about rights issues, I don't want them to say we spoke some jargon. What is it in basic language?
In basic language, I guess you're saying it's an opportunity for a shareholder, or even somebody who's not a shareholder right now, but can actually be able to purchase shares in the market to actually be able to buy additional shares. And then the money that will be raised, because when you're buying additional shares, that means you're providing capital to the business. That money that now will be raised is the $2 billion shillings that we're hoping to raise during this process.
Okay, excellent. And thank you. You'll be demystifying to us what you seek to do with that. But now you talked about that this rights issue will be used to support the last phase of your company's turnaround. And briefly shed some more light on what this process will entail right here.
Okay, let me just take a brief history, or I guess a little bit of a journey, step back if I may. So TransCentury is a very, I would call it a very good platform and has very good businesses in that platform. Over the years, so for example, we have East African Cables, as I mentioned earlier, we have AEA, for example, we have TANAREC and so forth. And over the years, we've been involved, the group has been involved in some of the most iconic infrastructure projects in this market. For example, we're involved in the Turkana power project, for example. We were involved in the geothermal plants in Naivasha. We were involved in the base titanium mining in the quarry and so forth. So over the years, as this growth has taken place, it also required now funding in order for the business to acquire additional businesses to position itself, and also to increase the capacity at some of our manufacturing facilities. So as we did that, as the company did that, it also resulted in a higher debt profile of the company, which subsequently now resulted in constrained access to working capital. So over the last 5 years now, that's the challenge that we've been trying to resolve over the last 5 years. So we came up with a 4-step process to turn around the business. So we started off, number one, making sure that we have good governance, global best practices when it comes to governance, across not only at the group level, but also at the subsidiary level with all our businesses. So that was number one. And then number two, it was to ensure that we restructure the debt at the group level and also at the subsidiary level. Today, 50% of that debt has actually been restructured. So that's been another positive. And then number three was to ensure that we have our order book that's executable. As we stand here today, we have an order book of about 50 million, just over $50 million. So that also has been successful. And then finally, the fourth step was actually to do fundraising to unlock the working capital for the subsidiary businesses. So that's the reason, for example, we're having this conversation, because we are now in the process of a rights issue that hopefully should be able to solve that last phase of the turnaround process.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thanks for that turnaround strategy, and we certainly believe that it will come through.
Yes.
So it will be important as well to understand from your strategy some of the notable achievements that you have achieved so far, both in your group level and at your subsidiaries, if you care, please.
Okay, very good question. So if, from a governance standpoint, for example, I'm very pleased that, we've implemented governance at the group level across the subsidiaries, so that has been very successful. We have very, very strong boards, at the group level and also the subsidiaries. And as a matter of fact, when you're turning around a business, which I've done many times over my career, there are a couple of things that you require in order for that turnaround to be successful. Number one, you have to make sure you have, when I talk about governance, I'm also talking about the board. The board that's willing to provide the oversight and the strategy overview for the business, which we have across the group. And then number two, you need to have a management team that's willing to actually go through that journey with you, because it's not a walk in the park. Unfortunately, we have management teams across the group that have actually done a fantastic job under the supervision of the board of directors, and traveled that journey to turn around these businesses. So that has been very, very helpful. And allow me to give specific examples.
Yeah.
So let's take Tanarek, for example. Tanarek is the largest manufacturer of transformers in East Africa. Through Tanarek actually we distribute, we sell our transformers all the way to Mozambique. We sell them in Ethiopia and obviously in East Africa as well. So it's been a very successful business. However, though, when I talk about turnaround, the 4 steps that I talked about, we were not only doing it for the group, we are also doing it. We had to do it for each of the units as well, so each of the businesses. So take Tanarek, for example. So when you're talking about turning around the business, we are talking about, number one, ensuring that the governance was in place. And then number two, ensuring that we're able to restructure the debt, which we're able to do that. And then number three, ensuring that there is an order book that can be executed on. And then ultimately, ensuring that we were able to unlock the working capital. Unfortunately, through the restructure of the debt, we were also able to unlock working capital. So Tanarek as a company, over the last 3 years, has been profitable. Tanarek in 2017 had top-line revenue of about, 650 million shillings. As of the last financial reporting year, Tanarek was over 2 billion shillings in revenue. So you can see it's a company that has gone through that process of the turnaround and has been successfully turned around. Let me give another example of a different company, East African Cables.
Yeah.
One of the best known brands, especially when it comes to cables in this market. Everybody knows about it. Yeah. It went through the same process again. Governance, restructured the debt. We moved it from one financial institution to another, and then obviously got a haircut on that. And then number three, order book. It has a solid order book. And then ultimately now we are working on it as far as getting access or unlocking, getting access to working capital.
Okay.
So a business like that currently has constraints on working capital and yet continues to perform well, yet continues to grow. As a matter of fact, the first half of 2022, East African Cables' top-line revenue grew by 55%. Now, you can imagine a business like East African Cables that does not is operating under constrained working capital conditions. Once it has working capital, you can imagine how that business will perform.
Okay.
And then on top of that, given that it's well positioned in the market as far as what the new administration is implementing going forward, be it from an infrastructure standpoint in such sectors as transportation, water, agriculture, and so forth, which are some of the areas that we are diversified into. So it will do very well. And then finally, if I may use one final example, AEA. Well known in this market, especially when it comes to wave bridges, in our bypasses and so forth. Expressways, I guess the bypasses.
Just for our viewers, what does AEA stand for?
AEA stands for Every East Africa.
Okay.
Although it just goes by AEA.
Yes.
Yes. So very, very solid business, continues to do well, As a matter of fact, about a month or so ago, it was in the news because it got awarded a contract to construct, what, 5,000 housing units in DRC Congo. So it's not just a Kenyan player, it's now a regional player.
Okay.
And as we diversify into some of these markets, we are just not going into them. We are looking as far as where are we going to be able to add most value, and where are some of the best markets going forward. You know, if I may wear my investor hat as Kuramo, you know, in DRC Congo, we actually own the largest palm oil production company in that country. As a matter of fact, we are the second largest employer in DRC after the government. You know, so we're also looking at what are some of the synergies that we can be able to capitalize on. So AEA will be very well positioned in some of these markets as we move forward. So those are just a couple of the examples. So to your question, has the turnaround been successful? The answer is yes. Are we, especially now that we are towards the tail end of that turnaround process. So it has been very successful. So obviously some of our businesses, the others that hopefully with the rights issue, it unlocks the fundraising aspect of it. So yes, in my view, it has been successful.
Okay, so let's head back to the conversation, and you know, you've spoken confidently about why you believe this is the place to invest for any shareholder. And then the quick question that they may be asking is, then how do they participate in this rights issue that is about to happen? And you know, when is this going to happen?
Okay, the rights issue will commence on this month, as a matter of fact, on December 29th. And it will close, or it will go through January 23rd.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a good investment for Christmas season, right?
It's what I would encourage the shareholders to do is obviously they should be in consultation with the brokers, so who can give them further guidance as far as how to go about participating in the rights issue, not only for the shareholders and any new shareholders who would want to participate in that process.
Okay. You unveiled your strategic plan, 2022, 2025.
Yes.
So one of the key things that I would like to ask is how your outlook for the future business looks like, how the future holds now with this particular strategic plan. What are you seeing in the offing, especially now after the successful rights issue?
Okay, thank you. So the new strategic plan we have, we are calling it the AHIDI strategy. AHIDI strategy.
AHIDI, okay.
The AHIDI strategy we've now migrated away from the turnaround strategy, because now we are coming towards the tail end of that. The AHIDI strategy now is focusing purely on returning the group to profitability. So that's the key focus now. You know, yes, some of the subsidiary units are profitable, but I'm looking at it from a group standpoint. Can we now be able to transition this business back to profitability? And we are very, very bullish on that. We are seeing many opportunities across the spectrum. Many our brands are very well positioned in many of our markets, be it in Kenya, in East Africa for that matter, and so forth. So I'm very bullish as far as the future prospects of getting now this business back to profitability.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, we'll always have critics out there who will be saying, should I consider, you know, investing with TransCentury and the likes? And they're watching. Of course, we also have the people who believe in what you're doing, but we'd like to address them all as shareholders, so that at least we can, you know, clear the air for anybody who may have a question. What is your word to shareholders right now that you have now just done a turnaround and you're about to move to what you're calling the profitability phase now in your strategy? What would be your word to shareholders and even the critics out there?
I think I'll tell them, you know, they are, and maybe I would answer this question this way. Allow me to wear an investor hat.
That's okay.
As an investor.
Sure.
Because most of I may just invest in TransCentury. If I look at it from an investor standpoint, there are some key things that I look for in a business. One, does that business have proper governance in place? And if it does not, can we be able to implement governance?
Okay.
And that one, for TransCentury, I give it a tick. That has been accomplished. Two, does that business have a strategy that can be executed on? And by strategy, I mean, is there a market for the products that they're trying to sell? You know, how are they positioned in that market, and so forth? How is the debt profile, you know, of that business? So that's all part of the strategy. So again, that across the group, I give it a tick as far as the strategy is concerned. And then finally, number three, does the company have the right management team that can be able to execute on that strategy. And then when I look at it from that standpoint, again, I think I mentioned earlier, we have extremely well-talented, management teams across the group that are actually running these businesses. So I'll give it another tick. So am I bullish on TransCentury story going forward? Absolutely. Obviously, I'm biased as being part of TransCentury, but that's what I was saying. If I take a step back and put my investor hat, looking from the outside, I would say it's a very good and interesting company. It should be a very interesting company going forward. In addition, as a chairman, as group chairman of TransCentury, and as a major investor in this business, I'm very comfortable and very confident in the prospects of the business going forward. That's why, for example, as an investor, we are still very vested in the business, 5 years after we made the investment. Yes.
Let's talk about opportunities that you're seeing as, team lead in terms of moving the group. What are you seeing for the businesses owned by TransCentury Group going forward?
Generally, we are seeing a lot of prospects across our various subsidiaries, especially across some of the sectors that we focus in, be it transportation, for example, be it water and sanitation, and also in the agricultural space. So going forward, there's a lot of prospects there. And also, not only from a sector standpoint, but we're also seeing opportunities from a regional standpoint as well. And that's why some of our businesses are starting to venture outside of even the East African community market. As I mentioned earlier, selling transformers into Mozambique, building, involved in projects, for example, in DRC, Congo, and so forth. So also from a regional standpoint, we continue to see that.
Okay. When I look at your investment profile, I see quite a huge investment in, the green economy. You've talked about geothermal. You've talked about, some areas that are really cognizant of climate and where we're moving at, clean energy and all that. Is this by coincidence or is it intentional?
Well, we don't do anything by coincidence.
Yes.
Everything we do is intentional.
Okay.
Yes. And we approach it from an opportunistic standpoint. So, because at the end of the day, we have to make sure that whatever we are venturing into makes economic sense and ultimately should be able to make money for us. So that's how we approach it.
Okay. Great. So let's talk about what we've seen in the latest trends, especially with the current government that has a keen focus on infrastructure, and you're quite big in that, as you've spoken about what you're doing in Congo and the likes. So my question is this for you here in Kenya and the region. What do you see and where do you see yourself positioned in this particular agenda?
Okay, in regards to infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay. Our businesses are extremely well positioned, excuse me, extremely well positioned in the infrastructure space. And that one I can talk about, for example, East African cables, very well positioned.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why even a business like that has constraints from a working capital standpoint continues to perform well. And that's the reason why I keep saying, once we unlock and solve some of those challenges, that business will do very well. Take a business such as, Tanarek. I think I mentioned even in Tanarek, we actually we've started a subsidiary here in Kenya as well, to take advantage of those opportunities now here in this local market.
Yeah.
And the same can be said of some of our other businesses as well. Yes.
Wow. I'd like to end this conversation by asking you to, directly once again speak to the people as your part in short. What would you call to action to them?
As an African, I'm a firm believer that as Africans, we should be active participants to finding solutions to African problems. And that's what I believe TransCentury is positioned to be to be a solution provider to some of these challenges.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it.
There you have it, right here, speaking as it is, Shaka Kariuki, the group chairman of TransCentury Group, speaking to us here on the Trading Bell about the just to come rights issue and telling us that you better participate on it. And if you're a shareholder and you have any questions, I believe they have been answered. So take advantage in this particular season of Christmas, transition into the next year of this new investment. And you never know, you might end up smiling all the way 2022 and forth.